Man, I tell you, I feel like what world do we live in where I'm the first person to make a video about this in response to either Gamers Nexus or Linus responding to Gamers Nexus or anything like that, at least that I've seen thus far. Uh, Steve, if you're watching, I watched the beginning of your video and was immediately turned onto your site to review your comments in response to Linus's comments from the WAN show on the 17th. And I find them, as someone who really appreciates your channel for in-depth data on computer and nerd stuff, I find this to be insufficient at best. And given the amount of effort and time and data that you put into your channel and the things on your channel, I would have thought that in a weekend you would be able to provide a substantial response to the issues of merit that Linus brought up. I'm going to go over these really fast because I'll be honest, I read through this, and when I read through this, I was immediately frustrated. Because it seems clear to me and a number of your viewers, Steve, that I have their comments on your video that I'm going to read after this. It seems clear to me that we'll just dive in. We'll dive in right now. Anything I'm about to say, right? I'm not alleging one way or another in favor of Linus or in favor of Steve being right about, whatever the, actual issues of debate are. I'm just saying there were some claims made by Linus, and these are your response to those claims. And they do not seem to hold up, at least not in the way that you seem to think they do, that you would include them in the statement. Okay, so I'll include this in the description of my video. We're going to dive in because I could talk for hours on this because it just frustrates me, right? Okay, so GN's response to Linus Sebastian, right? On January 17th, 2005, Linus makes his comment, and I believe here they refer to the evidence that Linus was wanting, that he requested in his video, and here they are wanting to provide the evidence for you to review. All right. You do claim here, though, Steve, that Linus Sebastian's failure to resolve issues or unprofessionalism in prior communication are available. However, only the minimum amount of interactions are presented. That is, as it would seem, kind and generous of you to not post everything that you have from Linus or, Nick Light or, Luc Lafreniere. It's kind of you to not include those things, I guess, as a professional courtesy. But we're going to dive into what you've provided here, and it would be clear to me that you have not provided a professional courtesy in acting good faith. In acting in good faith with these things that you're providing, right? So let's we're gonna scroll through here. You've got a couple of receipts that you provided, right? And these were part of your evidence for the criteria for no contact, right? Which you have listed in your policies. You've actually got a video cited here for the problem with Linus Tech Tips, accuracy, ethics, and responsibility. I did watch that video when it first came out. I thought there was a lot of very interesting things said there for Linus Tech Tips, Linus Media Group as a company. And I thought it was very interesting seeing the pivot that Linus Media Group has made since then as a whole, potentially in light of this video, in light of other concerns, but they have clearly made a lot of changes at their company. That video is here. This is Steve's video. go watch that. It is, I mean, at the very least, Steve and Gamers Nexus make good videos that are interesting to watch. Okay, so on that, sorry, I should scroll up here. Policies, contact, they provide the examples, Gamers Nexus does, of instances where they had no contact, where they had mixed contact, and where they had contact beforehand on issues that they were reporting on. Linus Media Group, LTT, was included in the no contact section for reasons of this is a response to existing content, subject comment available, stuff is provable, public information, motive and opportunity to mislead, okay, based on prior public comments about the issue, and you refer to the WAN show, their reply to Billet, which is something that Linus specifically brought up in his comments on this Friday's WAN show, this last Friday's WAN show, the 17th. He brought this up about how you were missing explicit context for the comments that you made, which you did not refer to at all in your statement on your website in reference to the WAN show from January the 17th, 2025. So please, Steve, at least add a comment or context as to why you believe the additional context and emails that Linus Media Group have provided are false or misleading or lies. Because either the things that they're saying are lies or misleading, or you had a misunderstanding about the issue and the context of the issue, and you said things and misled people about LTT, right? I mean, that's what it would appear to me to be. And you haven't made a comment in reference to Linus's comment from Friday. So please just add a comment, add some context. I mean, it would seem to me that you could probably, I mean, this is your website. I don't know. You could probably add a comment on there, right? Excuse me. You could probably edit what you've already uploaded to your website and add additional context regarding the Billet Labs stuff, right? Again, I'm not trying to take a side here one way or the other. I'm just trying to point out that what you have provided would, at first glance, appear to be a sufficient standalone response to the things that Linus said on January the 17th, 2025 on the WAN show, but it is not. It does not in any way address Billet Labs. It does not in any way address Honey. The comments that Linus was stating about Honey and your commentary on Linus Media Group or Linus and Honey, you didn't mention any of those two things. All right. And okay, so history of failure to resolve issues or unprofessionalism in prior communications, right? These are the reasons that you did not contact them about their video. And the main thing that you refer to is receipt 1, history of failure to resolve, receipt 2, history of failure to resolve, and then dispute 3, unprofessionalism in prior communications. You did not address any of the others in your comment. So why didn't you address those? It would seem, okay, maybe you think those are self-sufficient or are self-proving, so you don't need to provide any comment as to why you did not contact them. We're going to dive into these these 3 receipts real quickly because they seem to fall apart. At least the first 2 fall apart immediately, and the second one is up for debate, right? This first one is history of failure to resolve issues. What is this? All right. For anyone who wants more context, I'm going to 30,000 foot jump over the issue. You need to read the entirety of the report on Gamers Nexus's website to have your own opinion regarding this. I would also say that you should watch the WAN show in its entirety, or at least the entirety of LTT's clip on the comments that they're making about Gamers Nexus. Then read Gamers Nexus's community post that they posted on Friday, right before the WAN show went live, and then watch the beginning of Steve's video on Gamers Nexus, and then read the entirety of this, so you have more context. And if you haven't seen the video that Gamers Nexus made on LTT, I would suggest you do that as well. All right, so this history of failure to resolve issues. All right. So this claim is that LTT or Linus Sebastian or the group LMG, Linus Media Group, failed to resolve an issue. So what's the issue? All right. Immediately, the September 16, 2022 publication of The WAN Show, Linus read from a script about EVGA and NVIDIA split. Now, you can read more of the context here, and then you can look at the actual evidence that Steve provided. It appears, based on everything that has said, that Linus Media Group, or the writers team at LMG, provided information to Linus, which he read on the WAN Show, which was taken directly from Steve's video. So what Steve did was he provided screenshots and examples. Hey, this is exactly what was quoted. This is exactly how it is information we know was privy only to us. So we know that you guys must have misquoted, or must have misattributed quotes or not given us credit for those quotes, et cetera, right? So he gives several examples. He gives examples of quotes without any edits. And he says it's above reproduction, right? To which Linus responds, I believe it was 34 minutes later via email, it looks like. So it was originally sent at 8:29, and then about 35, we'll say 35, 40 minutes later, Linus responds and says, I'll speak with the team about sourcing and citations going forward. And he has added a pinned comment, to which Steven says, thanks for the quick reply and action. Great. At no point do you, Steve, express in any of the evidence that you provided any additional expectation from Linus Media Group to take any other action on this issue. However, you do point out that there has been no public acknowledgement of plagiarism, nor retraction, nor retraction. WAN Show uploaded do not reference or cite Gamers Nexus either verbally or on screen at any point for the EVGA story. Your conclusion here is that Gamers Nexus reached out privately and in good faith to inform them, which I believe is true. That is true. You did reach out, A, privately, and B, it appears in good faith, right? You, however, say the expectation was that LTT LMG would resolve it satisfactorily and inform the public of any wrongdoing. The public was never informed, and Gamers Nexus was never attributed. The problem here, Steve, is that you never set that expectation. And you know what happens when you assume. Okay? So immediately reading this, I get frustrated as someone who really appreciates your thoroughness and your attention to detail in your work for not having something to stand on. Your foundation here is that expectations were not met. However, you do not provide any proof that there was any expectations. And the problem that I run into as someone who is a fan of your content and also is a fan of some of the stuff that LTT does. All right. I'm not saying that I'm totally objective here because I never watch LTT and I don't like any of their stuff. I've seen their stuff and I enjoy some of their stuff. I've seen your stuff and I enjoy some of your stuff. I think both of you guys do an excellent job into different veins of tech and YouTube. It does seem to me that you assumed that they would take additional action. You said nothing about it at the time. And because you said nothing about it at the time, they took no further action. And now you're trying to whip that back in their face. But that's not their fault for not taking additional action unless you explicitly stated, this is the expectation, and you fell short. No. It has been nearly 3 years. And unless you can provide evidence that you set an expectation that they did not meet, that they agreed to, that they did not meet, that they knew of, that they did not meet, unless you provide that, there is no expectation for them to live up to, especially when we review, it seems very clear that you said, thanks for the quick reply and action. You had a relatively quick response, like 10 minutes, right? But you didn't set expectation. And maybe it was because you had some kind of cordial relationship. You were just expecting this, but you can't expect things without saying it and then try to whip this back in their face 3 years later. That fault is on you, Steve. I'm sorry, but it appears to be that it is on you. Again, this is my opinion based off of just reading this. If you have more evidence, Steve, that's awesome and that's great. Please provide it. All right, we're going to jump into the second one, history of failure to resolve issues. This one is regarding a video that LTT did, and this one is one of those videos that's immediately over my head. They were essentially, based on my understanding, they were testing a CPU, and there was some delitting of the CPU that was going on through the testing. So what Steve did was he emailed them and said, hey, I think some of your thermal numbers were a result of a few factors below. So Steve then provides in an email to Linus reasoning for, hey, I think this is why these things happened. Not trying to nitpick or anything. I just wanted you to be aware of for the future, or more accurately, wanted the writers to be aware. And then he gives all his things to say. And we look at this next one. Linus adds Anthony, who worked on the prep for this video. Any thoughts? Anthony responds to each one of those points in particular. Hopefully this clarifies things. And seriously, thanks for advice on future delitting. And if we jump to the last email, which was from Steven, at least the last email that we see, right? Say, thank you guys. You've been doing a great job of driving LTT content with a more technical undertone, but without being too heavy for the audience. Really liking the direction over there lately. And again, if you don't know when this instance took place, this was 7.5 years ago, I believe. October, let's just say 7 years ago to be safe, but it was over 7 years ago that this instance happened. All right. This is unsolicited advice, you say, Steve. But while we're talking, I'll share that this is what we learned, etc., etc. Anyway, feel free to email at any time. At no point in this email do you set an expectation for resolution, as you say. So how did they fail to resolve this? You note here, you reached out privately, alerted Linus. He copied the writer. We felt it was cordial. However, Linus never posted a pinned comment. You did not ask for a pinned comment. He never updated its description. You did not ask him to update the description, and never otherwise publicly noted the numerous test setup errors on the video in question, which you did not ask for. As of the date of this publication, which was around 7 years later, the video has 2.2 million views. You state this is not included in your August 2023 coverage as it was from several years prior, and we only focused on the most recent years of errors as disclosed in that video. Okay, Steve. These first 2 points, in my opinion, of a cursory reading without any other evidence from you, appears to clearly be an instance of you assuming that X, Y, and Z would be done without you explicitly stating or requesting resolution. Again, you cannot ask for resolution, or excuse me, you cannot expect resolution without asking for resolution, right? In this case, unlike the other case, in this case, resolution is not implicitly warranted. It appears to me, based on reading these emails, this is just a cordial exchange, you trying to provide excuse me, geez Louise, excuse me, it just seems to be a cordial communication where you're trying to provide some of your wisdom and your help for the Linus LMG team, that way they can be better. It seems to be cordial, kind, and no response needed because no response was requested. Okay? So these first two seem to be an instance of assumption, Steve. There is no explicit call for action. And in the first one, your response seemed to indicate that the action taken was sufficient. All right. Last one. Unprofessionalism in prior communications. I want to stress these are private texts between two people that are in the same industry. These are two professionals. And there is a comment that I copied from Steve from your video where someone says, yeah, it seemed to me that this was an unprofessional conversation between two professionals. All right. I'm not sure if that was the exact quote in the comment, but we'll get to it in a moment. I kind of agree with that, though. Not every instance of communication between two professional individuals needs to be professional. As someone who would try and always be kind and professional, I would hope that I act in that way. But that does not mean that every instance of communication ever will be professional. All right. I want to stress, I do not condone the use of language in these texts. Linus uses, as he referred to in a previous WAN show, the hard R, which is not the one you're thinking of. Go watch the WAN show clip between Linus and Luke. It was actually a little bit funny, although I would hope that Linus does not use language like this publicly or privately, as he does in this instance. I don't think it's warranted. I don't think it's justified. It frustrates me because this is your example of unprofessionalism, but the way that you would infer or lead your viewers to believe, it would appear that this was in a business setting. Now, it appears to me that this is just two guys shooting the crap about work stuff and being like, hey, back and forth regarding issues that they disagree on. Now, you, based on reading all of this and reading and just, understanding how you've talked about LMG and Linus Sebastian, it would appear to me that you are uncomfortable with Linus Sebastian. That is totally fine. You're allowed to feel that way. I mean, I don't care how you feel about the guy personally. I do think, however, that the bar for unprofessionalism in prior communications, as it would pertain to journalistic integrity, I believe that bar would be very high. Very high. And I would think that while this instance is unprofessional, it does not quite meet that standard of unprofessionalism in general. This is unprofessional. I don't think it meets that standard for unprofessionalism in journalism to allow you to circumvent the entirety of reaching out to them in that instance, especially considering the fact that you reaching out for contact to Linus Media Group does not necessitate you reaching out solely to Linus Sebastian, right? There are many people that you could reach out to or could have reached out to that you neglected to reach out to, right? Or you chose not to reach out to, right? So for those of you who don't want to read through all of this, there is essentially Linus is stating, hey, I don't think your coverage of what we said was entirely accurate regarding this video. Linus says he's the one on the left. That's a lot of stuff. We go, all that's commentary from him, commentary from him, commentary from him, commentary from him, and then a couple messages from Luke and back and forth and back and forth, right? Essentially what Steve comes here to say at the end is that he was not trying to attack Linus or comment directly on Linus. he was making some comments in his video regarding Reddit, regarding Twitter, etc., and none of this was a personal attack on Linus. You also state, without evidence, that there were derogatory comments made by Linus Sebastian in a conversation with Steve Burke on a private phone call, where Steve referred to Burke as being less autistic than you used to be. That is, if true, terrible. Not something not something he should have said. Like, geez Louise, not something he should have said. And I would argue that using the R word wherever he did in his text here, I would also consider not acceptable. And I would not do that. And I would argue that it is up to him, Linus Sebastian, to take accountability for those comments and to not say those things again, right? There is no additional evidence to provide. Okay. So you're alleging this, you're stating that you can't prove it, and at this point, it just feels like a mudslinging match, Steve. Ultimately, these examples, among others, are still being kept private as a courtesy. This has not been courteous at all, Steve. But again, this is a drama match between the two of you. I know that you've said that this isn't, that this is you trying to be professional here, but you are being just as professional as Linus is. Let me make that abundantly clear, especially with your first two examples, which don't appear to hold water unless there is additional evidence regarding those that you have withheld. All right. Gamers Nexus believe these receipts answer the demand to provide them to support our statements that Sebastian has a history of unprofessionalism in prior communications while still maintaining the possible integrity of the privacy of the conversations. Okay. If publicly requested by Linus to produce further evidence, Gamers Nexus is prepared to do so. Awesome. Okay, cool. If he does that and you want to do that, great. You have made 3 claims here, one of which I would argue, the third one of which shows Linus making commentary that is unprofessional, right? The first 2 don't hold water unless you're withholding something. Because as I stated, both of those first 2 examples just set up to be an assumption from you expecting resolution. All right. Additional errors in representations. We're only listing a few of them below. So below that, you comment on special treatment. I'm skipping through that one because you essentially state that Linus states that other people were given special treatment by being contacted. You kind of refute that with your statements regarding Principal Technologies and Newegg. And you provide the examples for them, which I believe are in they're in that same policies, no contact. These errors could have been avoided by Linus, done proper research and conducted before making irresponsible and false statement. Further errors has also been documented, but have been held for brevity. I don't think now is the time for brevity, Steve. If Linus is saying false things about you, you need to provide all of the evidence about all of the things that he said that are false. All right, I never got a response. Misrepresentation number 2. Essentially, Linus is saying that he texted you and he never got a response from you. You allege here that it's because Linus texted a phone number that he knew you did not respond to. I should say, the inference that I get from reading this, in my opinion, is that you are stating that Linus intentionally and maliciously texted the wrong number. That is the inference, in my opinion. That is not what is being stated explicitly. That is what I inferred by reading it. So what you essentially state is that you changed your phone number, then Linus texted the wrong number, and on the 17th, Linus states he never got a response from a number that had no longer been actively monitored by Steve. Substantial evidence exists, and we are prepared to provide more upon Sebastian's public request to demonstrate that Linus Sebastian has been aware and actively engaging with Steve's correct phone number for at least 2 years preceding the messages shared on January 17th. Now, a lot of people commented on your video that this could have been a very simple mistake, and I think that is probably what it is, because I want to give him and you the benefit of the doubt in this situation. Now, you state that there is more evidence that exists that he knew better. And if, as you claim, there is more evidence that he knew better, that would infer that he did this intentionally, and you're withholding that evidence. So why are you withholding that evidence? You have the evidence, please provide it. Especially because you state here that even though this previous phone number is no longer monitored, but is still held in storage for security reasons, that would imply to me that you have those texts. You have that text. It was just on a phone, locked away in a vault where no one could see it, right? So do you have that, or is it just a phone number that's no longer active? Like which is it? And if you do have it, can you provide that? Why didn't you provide that? It seems like there's just not a lot going on there. You say that substantial evidence exists, but you provide remarkably little of it for this claim. Yes, this would depict you in a negative light, you and Gamers Nexus in a negative light, if these things are wholly and accurately true as you state them. But it does seem that you're withholding evidence. And I don't know why you would do that, because it seems to me, someone who just read through the whole thing, that you're withholding evidence for no reason other than to withhold it. Unless you believe that providing this evidence would be a breach of LMG or Linus Sebastian's privacy or security, right? Unless you believe that, which you don't state here, but you stated earlier regarding a different thing. So please clarify if that's the case. If you don't want to share it because that would be a breach of their privacy and security, just copy that statement right in here, and bada bing, bada boom. We'll wait for Linus to respond. Maybe he wants you to provide that regardless of those breaches. If Linus would like to make a public video requesting our further elaboration, he can do so and then provide us with a full transcript of his WAN show segment. We will then proceed to go line by line to dispute all false timelines, inaccuracies, and omissions from his WAN show segment, of which there are many. Short of that, we have provided the above examples of some of the critical errors from his video and provided the requested insufficient receipts to evidence our claims. Incorrect. They are insufficient. And I feel you know that, Steve, because you are diligent in all of your other work. Why did you not apply the same diligence to this? Those first two claims that you make regarding receipts do not stand at all. All right. So it just makes the entire thing more flimsy. All right. All right, you sent an email to them, yada, 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 bada bing, bada boom. And then you make it very clear here at the end that you're uncomfortable meeting with Linus personally. I don't care. If you are uncomfortable meeting with him, you never have to meet with him. I don't care. Just don't meet with him. That's not my problem. All right. You want to meet with Luke regarding, LTT labs or whatnot, do whatever, do that. Great. I don't care about that. You do repeat that there is an inference from LTT regarding the brotherhood, the brotherhood of tech YouTubers. And I would agree that Linus making those commentary was definitely to appeal maybe to a better nature, maybe to, I don't even want to say everyone's better nature, but it was definitely to color the issue in a specific light. Now, there are people who would argue that he did that intentionally to give you the benefit of the doubt. And there are people that would argue that he did that intentionally to misconstrue the viewers so that he could be perceived in a more positive light. I honestly don't care if you guys are friends. I don't care if you talk to other tech YouTubers. I don't think this is relevant to the people watching your videos or the people watching Linus's videos, except to stir up drama. All right. I do understand you wanting to provide the entirety of this to cover your back, yada, yada, yada. All right. And then in here, you make a comment about how, given the legal nature of Linus Sebastian's allegations, though, and let's try that again. Given the legal nature of Linus Sebastian's allegations, though, and on advice of our attorneys, I believe you meant given the legal nature of Linus Sebastian's allegations, though, and on advice of our attorneys, we are neither willing nor able to discuss this specific topic further, and any further contact related to this matter will instead be forwarded to Gamers Nexus LLC's attorneys if any response is necessary. This also just feels like it's stirring up drama. That may be true, and you may not want to touch this with a 10-foot pole personally. That's great. It does feel like not enough evidence has been provided to be sufficient, as you claim in this. All right. This has gone on way too long, this video. 36 minutes. I want to do this in like 15. All right, let's go ahead. We're going to switch to some comments that I pulled from your YouTube video, just because I think it is important to go over the fact that I am not the only one who thought this. It took me like 5 seconds to get to asking questions about the information you provided and then rereading your article several times and finding other comments that happen to agree with this. And there are a lot of comments. These are not all of the comments that I found. I don't know what your video is going to look like. I don't know what your like to dislike ratio is going to look like, but I just want to go through a couple of these. Hopefully we can do this in 10 minutes. Got the time down on this. Okay. First one, Yannick 7049. Thank you for making this comment. I don't get it. The first issue in your blog post. Oh, sorry. Several of these comments are going to make points that I have not yet made, that I have waited on, because I personally don't think I would have made them as eloquently as some of these guys did. But I do want to stress, Linus said several things in his video on the 17th, in the WAN show clip from the 17th, that you did not respond to at all, regarding Billet Labs, regarding Honey. Why did you not comment on either of those two things? Because in my personal opinion, those were the things that I thought were quite relevant. And if what Linus says regarding like Billet Labs, for instance, if what Linus says regarding Billet Labs is true, then it would seem to me that a retraction is necessary on your part, because the video that you made and the comments you made regarding Billet Labs, when I first watched the video, I don't know if you've made any edits or changes, really seemed to me like Linus Sebastian and Linus Media Group and LTT had made a continuous set of errors and lapse in judgment regarding Billet Labs and their product and the stuff going on with that product. Like severe and negligent and almost malicious is how I would, in my opinion, have inferred what you said regarding them. But if what Linus says is true, then a lot of the mistakes and the issues and the miscommunications that happened between Linus Media Group and Billet Labs that you covered, and in the way you covered them, would be at best misrepresentation of the situation. So I would love to have clarification from you that either refutes what Linus said regarding Billet Labs, or a clarification from you or a statement from you on that video, or maybe a comment, I don't know, on the video that you pin that says, hey, in light of additional evidence that we did not seek out and was not provided to us until a later date, in light of that evidence, all of this commentary we make must be viewed in a different light. Right. And I think that the Billet Labs issue really does tie into why reaching out to them would have been beneficial. All right. They could be wrong. Linus could have lied on the LAN show on Friday. He could have. Maybe he did. I don't know. But it would be pertinent to prove whether or not his comments are true, right? Right? Okay, let's dive into these comments. I don't get it. Your first issue, history of failure to resolve issues. It's an email chain with one back and forth within less than 2 hours, where the final mail is you responding satisfied about the solution provided, which was implemented within the hour of your complaint. How does that prove any point? If you weren't satisfied, why not ask them to do more? You'd have been in your right to ask them to credit you better, assuming you were the source at all, which in my opinion, I would say that you probably were based on the information you provided, but that's neither here nor there. They seem to take the issue seriously, and swiftly. So closing off with thanks for the quick reply and action, and then holding that against them is just weird. Am I missing something here? The other examples don't seem to show much either. I'm frankly not sure if this is serious at all. I mean, the second example seems to just be a pleasant back and forth with LMG taking your advice and you again saying you're happy about it, which makes its inclusion silly. Then I saw that your second example is from over 7 years ago. You had to go that far back to find your second example. Why aren't you addressing or even acknowledging the fact that Linus completely disproved the entire narrative you made about Billet in 2023, as well as how the allegations of misconduct have since been disproven? You are demanding LMG make corrections to previous reporting. You can't, in the same breath, or lack thereof in this case, ignore a massive discrepancy in your own reporting and refuse to issue a correction, especially one that did the damage it did to them. It's just incredibly hypocritical and unprofessional, and I'd even say worse than the lack of professionalism you and Linus both had in a private conversation. As for the damage to GN, sorry, but at this point, with this blog post now fresh in my mind, how is it not self-inflicted? Great comment, Yannick7049. Let's actually, there we go. All right. Jupiter 2000. I can put myself in your shoes and understand there have been multiple events leading up to the situation. I can also see why you perceive his response as aggressive. I understand how you arrived at your decision and the reasoning behind them. I can also empathize with people making choices I personally wouldn't make, yet still understand why they might have done so. Now, there's a lot more commentary to read and a lot more comments, so I'm going to start skimming through these. I'm not going to read the entirety of these. Hopefully, I will leave them up long enough for you to read the entire comment, but I will probably start jumping down. Excuse me. Jeez Louise. It is important to consider the position he is in, responsibility he carries, the stress of managing those responsibilities, etc., etc. That said, the way you handled your video stood out to me. I remember you saying something along the lines of, we cannot trust or believe anything they say at this point, and we will not talk about it anymore. This came across as dismissive, not just toward him, but the entire team working at the channel. For a channel that has brought so much positive impact and benefited many tech YouTubers, your approach seemed to discredit all the hard work of those people. I understand that he was rude, and you should have called him out directly to resolve the issue personally. However, it feels like you kept your frustrations to yourself, let it build up, and then responded in a way that escalated the situation rather than addressing it constructively. Yes, what you revealed about Linus is unflattering, but the way you generalized your issue and painted the entire LMG team in a bad light feels wrong to me. At this point, it feels your actions have overshadowed the initial grievance. You've turned what could have been a personal resolution into a larger conflict, and to me, that makes your actions more questionable in this situation. He says the best way is to address the issues. To move forward, the best way is to address the issues constructively. Your response feels like a step backward. I agree. Why not resolve this directly instead of responses like this, which have only made things worse? It could have been a moment for growth and reconciliation. However, until I see evidence that your actions are coming from good faith, I've lost faith in Gamers Nexus. I understand why you feel the way you did and you took the actions you did, but I cannot condone backstabbing over 100 people and discrediting their hard work because of mistakes. Yes, mistakes made by one person. When you look at the bigger picture, none of the mistakes seem to be serious enough to justify your approach. If you can't acknowledge the gravity of what you did, it'll be hard for you to grow, etc., etc. I think you owe LMG an apology, not for calling out Linus specifically, but for how you generalized your frustrations to the entire team, misrepresented their efforts. The people at LMG did nothing to warrant the punishment you dealt them. I do agree. I feel like this is I feel like in many ways, this is a personal beef between Linus Sebastian and you, because a lot of the evidence you provide appears to be personally with Linus Sebastian, right? The problem is Linus isn't the one dealing with all these consequences. The entirety of the rest of the company is now, right? Maybe a couple years ago when Linus was CEO, but he's not anymore. So there are a lot of other people that are directly feeling the consequences of your actions, Steve, not just Linus. He's just the one who's public about them. All right. Lucin Hocool, I think is your name. With all critique that LTT deserves, it baffles me. It's the focus of recent discussion between LTT GNN was not mentioned by Steve in his response. Yes, Billet Labs and Honey. Why didn't you respond on those? How he was not fair with LTT in the Honey case. When one side admits they're wrong and the other never admits its wrongdoings, I get suspicious about who is trying to end conflict, and who is not. GN misrepresented LTT and Honey case and still didn't admit when his community called him out on the video. That's what we're frustrated about. I'm not frustrated about whether or not the LTT is good or bad, or whether or not the comments you make about them, excuse me, I should say, we are concerned with whether or not the comments you make about them are true, right? If they are true, then go ahead, make those comments. But if they're not true, or you're saying things in a bad light with bad faith without the entire context, it does appear to be misrepresentation at best, right? That opened the door. Steve discussed a lot of previous things and never mentioned Honey before anyone mentioned. I'm an LTT fan, occasionally watching the GN video on hardware reviews of my interest. I agree that Steve has a lot of merits in his critiques, of LTT, which I agree. Most than LTT, but not in the Honey case, right? Being called out by his own fan base and swept under the rug is indicative that a person will never admit his wrongs and always demand the other side concedes in order to maintain a good relationship, right? This is where it seems a little hypocritical, Steve. It seems like you're making comments, right, about other people and holding them accountable. But the moment that Linus tries to hold you accountable, you do not provide evidence that proves him wrong. You would it appear to be just start slinging mud. Maybe that's just the view that I got of it, right? All right, Jim Leviathan, just a vibe baby's response. I think Steve is right to note and call out the juxtaposition of Linus's two-pronged approach that I will characterize as, on the one hand, let's chill and put this behind us, while on the other hand, note the legal weapon that I have not so concealed behind my back. I'm not sure how to parse that combination, but it's definitely worth calling out. On the other hand, I note that Steve's reply doesn't address what I would regard as the most substantive thrust of Linus's argument, namely GN's practices in relation to right to reply. And I would agree here, right? If Linus is true about Billet Labs, then one comment from them provided to you would have cleared that up. And what, a third of that video that you made on them that seems to be about Billet Labs, I don't know if it's exactly a third, but a large chunk of that video that you made about LTT and LMG and Linus Sebastian is regards to Billet Labs. So if Linus is correct, then nearly all of that needs to be taken in a different context, right? But you did not reach out to them for a response, so you did not pursue that context. So you made a large portion of that video without correct context, if Linus is right. If he's wrong, then you need to prove that he's wrong at this point. Right. And then the comment, I disagree. To me, it makes it, to me, the post makes it pretty clear they believe in reaching out to big companies for response. It gives them an unfair opportunity to get ahead of the story that they shouldn't have. Whether that is the company trying to cover for their bad customer service once they realize that customer has a big following, media, et cetera, et cetera. They've been consistent in their professional practices, and I have to say I agree with them here. LTT has a massive reach with all their tech channels. Reaching out for a comment would allow them to design a coordinated media strategy to diminish and discredit the video. Also, journalists. Oh, I didn't capture the entirety of that. The point of wanting to capture that reply was that you do have a lot of people. I would say a majority of the people commenting on your video, Steve, agree with you in such a way that I would think is toxic, potentially. Um, I don't agree with this reply by no one ID 7PT whatever. Yeah, reaching out to big companies for a response gives them an unfair opportunity to get ahead of the story. Yeah, if I'll give this guy the benefit of the doubt, if you had reached out to them and they had coordinated a media attack and bullied other creators in the industry, right? If they had done that, it would have been inappropriate and despicable. However, in light of the fact that your video appears to be taken out of context because you did not have a response from them, would be the exact reason why you should have reached out to them. Because now you look like the bad guy, potentially, if what Linus said about Billet Labs is true. If what he said is true, you are the bad guy because you said a lot of things without proper context, and you intentionally did not pursue that context, and you could have. All right. Read the response. I have bought merch product from both channels. All right. I understand that the shout out and pin comment regarding EBJ. Sorry, he states, I believe, in a lower comment that he. Oh no, that's right. Different one. Never mind. Went show regarding EVGA that it may not have been what you were looking for, but you can't say they didn't address the issue like they said they would. If you still had a problem with it, you should have said so and insisted on it. Linus can't know you found that to be insufficient if you said nothing else after that. You know what they say about people who assume. Receipt 2. To some extent, this feels more like a difference of opinion than actual factual intentional errors. And again, you assumed that they would take action? Did you? You didn't ask for it? Receipt 3. Again, this sounds like a difference of opinion. Two professionals going back and forth, in my opinion, and just somewhat normal discussion. Linus may have gotten a bit aggressive with the R word, but even that was not directed at you, but rather at other people. I grant that even if he didn't direct it at you, that still could make you uncomfortable, right? And if that makes you uncomfortable, you don't have to discuss things with him. I assume you have other people at your team at your company on your team that could have communicated with him going forward if that's how you felt. So example 1, so is your argument to address the lack of following ethics saying, well, we don't follow journalistic ethics for anyone actually, so you're not special? I guess you're right in that sense, and Linus was wrong about that. But is that really what you want to say? And I would think that you would need to provide more context here, Steve. Example 2, that really sounds like Linus typed Steve in his phone, your old number showed up, he wrote that, not realizing the mistake. Yeah, that means you didn't see the message and all. Probably was somewhat surprised by what Linus said. But isn't that just a miscommunication problem that you could have addressed normally? Isn't saying that this is mischaracterization implying intent, going way too far, making it way too personal? It really isn't difficult to figure out how that happened and that there were no bad intentions there. This guy is potentially wrong. If you have evidence to prove that there was a mischaracterization and you are intentionally implying intent, which I would infer based on reading the entirety of the stuff posted on your website that you are implying intent. You are inferring, in my opinion, that Linus maliciously texted the wrong number. That's my opinion, and I could be wrong. And if you want to prove that he did that, you need to provide the evidence for that. You're absolutely right to call it consistent errors in LMG's content. Absolutely correct. But you took things out of way too far with no good reason, and this response only makes me think that more. The honey snipe also came out of left field. You didn't address that either, or how out of context that was. Please take some time to reflect, expand your network, and the people you confide in. The response seems borderline irrational, not what I watch your channel for. SF Giants 3535. I'm all about consumer advocacy and appreciate the coverage when it comes to LTT. They are not a retail outlet except for their store. We are not consumers of LTT products. their channel is informative and entertaining. You're not addressing consumer advocacy. You're criticizing a peer. To all of us on the outside, we thought you, LTT, JTC, were somewhat friends. I think you owe LTT and the PC community on YouTube an apology for the attack. I would say that that would potentially be true regarding Honey if you are unable to provide a response to it at all. Maybe you should, in my opinion, you should respond directly to what Linus said on the WAN show on the 17th regarding Honey and Billet Labs. Because what he says are true, then it would appear to me and your average viewer that you are in the wrong in those, at the very least, in those two instances. Totally disregarding the entirety of everything you said in your response on your website, because the responses on your website don't matter if Linus is right. Chrisiums, I don't see a written response to LMG to be even remotely sufficient, which is what you said, Steve, right? You scraped the bottom of the barrel for some of those and didn't address some of the larger issues that were raised on last week's WAN. Boy, this is, I should have just taken shorter comments. Okay, Noah Kuro, read your article. Thanks for publishing. A lot of it's pretty damning for Linus. At the very least, I agree that the comments that Linus makes in his conversations to you could definitely make you uncomfortable and would definitely be reason for you not to reach out to them. But you are not the only person at GN, I would assume. And if you wanted to provide full and complete research, you should have had somebody reach out to them for context, or excuse me, for comment, in my opinion, at least on the issue with Billet Labs. I do believe it's important to treat a large organization as a large organization. While Linus had a controlling ownership, he's not the CEO. And he does comment here right at the end of that paragraph that he was the CEO at the time, or he had not, excuse me, the new CEO had not fully settled in. So that does make Linus kind of responsible as representing the opinion and actions of OMG leadership, right? I don't think your article entirely absolves you, however, and I think the community would appreciate hearing a fuller response. Your article did not make any response to many of Linus's claims of factual inaccuracies in your initial coverage of LMG. Do you have a response to those claims, such as inaccuracies regarding the situation with Billet? It would be nice to know if you still stand by those claims in light of additional evidence. Yes. If not, an explicit retraction or correction would be good too. This part is more about responding to your community at this point than responding to Linus, is we need to be certain you too take steps to correct your errors when necessary, or if they aren't errors, provide justification of why. I really like Noah's comment here, Noah Kuro, your comment here, that this is not a response to Linus. This is a response to your community and the concerns that your community is raising on this, right? Whether or not there's a Venn diagram and people overlap between LTT and GN doesn't matter. You are responsible to respond to your community if they want answers on potential inaccuracies or inadequacies in your content. I don't also feel like the first two topics of your article don't have much merit. I agree with regards to citing for the EVGA story. It appears to I could essentially, this is just a summation of everything else that I've read in my own personal opinions. But, here we read right in the middle, without the ability to read your mind, makes it seem like you were perfectly satisfied with the action. Oh, gosh. With the action taken. I feel similarly about the second point regarding the deleted IHS content. You never requested any public resolution. In fact, you explicitly said, just wanted you to be aware for the future, which heavily implies that without saying otherwise, you weren't expecting any public corrections to the existing content, only to future content. For both of these cases, you never asked for specific resolution, so why did you expect to receive specific resolution? Overall, the rest of the article was so strong that I don't understand why you included these weaker points. The rest of the article was strong enough to stand on its own. Personally, I don't agree with that. I think that you make a lot of inference and implication I do think that the third point regarding your communication with Linus does prove reason for you to be uncomfortable with communicating with Linus, and you do not have any obligation as an autonomous individual. You do not have any obligation to communicate with Linus, and have never had, no matter what your professional capacity is. You are autonomous and you have no requirement to communicate directly with him if you feel uncomfortable to do so. And I'm not like giving you permission to do that. It feels to me that that's obvious as someone looking from the outside in. If you feel uncomfortable, don't do it. And based on your comments at the end of your article, you don't feel comfortable and you're not going to do so. You're not going to meet with Linus personally further unless it's with other people. Okay. Again, I don't think that's justification to meet the high threshold of unprofessional behavior to subdue the right to reply for journalistic integrity. It's a very high standard, and what you have provided as evidence is very high, but I think it's just short of that standard. Thanks for bringing this. Some of the action from Linus is certainly inexcusable. Some of it may be a legitimate mistake, such as messaging the wrong phone. That could have happened. However, this then means that Linus fell into the same trap of not reaching out for comment prior to publishing, the same error they are accusing you of. As had Linus brought this up in his email prior to the WAN show, I'm sure you would have informed them why they never received a response. Thank you for all the work you do. I'm certainly looking forward to the content on the new channel. And a lot of people really seem to like the fact that you're splitting everything off into to do two different channels. I mean, I'm indifferent one way or another. I watch both of those videos as I find interest in the things that you post. So, okay. And then he made it some edits because he misspoke. All right, since your page, gosh, geez Louise. Oh my goodness. We are going to rush through this one. The main point. Okay, so we'll just do item 1 should be taken seriously indeed, but reading through, you published it. It looks like it was a serious response was given by Linus, right? Your later commentary that you add now in this article is negative. You feel the response from Linus was insufficient. You should have raised it with them at the time. Bad testing indeed. The email bad testing indeed. The email seems fine, very respectful. A correction should indeed have been issued. Was indeed addressed in later videos by you raising concerns on their testing and their later response. In my opinion, they did not need to make a correction unless you asked for one. They didn't need to make a correction on the video. They didn't need to make a comment. It seemed to be a very cordial conversation. The 2-bit channel no one watches anymore might have been seen as disrespectful, but could also have just been meant as a reminder that your channel has grown. That people online tend to blindly follow and pitchfork, and that has an effect on people. I see no problems with these statements. There are some cuss words, but they're not directed as persons, and they're fine. It does seem to me that that's just a personal conversation, not a professional conversation. Though I would not have used the language that Linus uses or those cuss words in any kind of professional or personal situation. Significant reputational manager, significant reputational manager that continues to be unmitigated and accrue additional damage with each passing day. The content is allowed to propagate knowingly false information. It is an extreme exaggeration of the situation. You cannot accuse LMG of making misleading statements and then make them yourself. Please back up, or he says back up damages by real hard, he or she, sorry, Neverwinter X says back up the damages by real hard evidence if you can, but I'm sure you're aware that's not really possible because of you on the WAN show, essentially a podcast, did not really equal a loss of view for the Gameless Nexus channel. Agree. And if you also mean any errors made in LMG videos like reviews damage you financially, then you're not really being serious anymore. Alternatively, if you mean this back and forth discussion damages you financially, you publicly began it and have continued to do so publicly. Any further contact related to this matter will instead be forwarded to Gamers Nexus LLC's attorneys if a response is necessary. Seems highly unnecessary and exaggerated. Let it be noted that Gamers Nexus was the first to threaten with lawyers in this discussion. I have to add that it's very ironic you do that when you report on companies that use litigation to silence. You felt uncomfortable talking to him. That's okay. Not everyone has to like each other. But you have made it and continue to make a vendetta with your company clearly for a part based on personal feelings. Your article doesn't address the recent reason why discussion popped up again, the honey discussion, right? I also still stand on my comment that in the honey video, it's nice that you're suing that company, honey, but everyone is free to spend their time suing or not. The whole I'm holier than you because I sued and you didn't line of reasoning is unbefitting. You also accuse LMG of not retracting or correcting statements, and yet have not done so yourself regarding statements made about honey and various others accusations longer ago in the original LMG problem video. In my opinion, you have let at least partially your feelings cloud your judgment. Please move on. You don't have to be friends. No one is asking for that. Yeah, there were a couple of responses to that. Great breakdown, 100% agree, very well said. Here's another one. Your article reads even worse than the stuff said on WAN. 1 second. A lot of stuff brought up as well, more like you're a child trying to pick at his older brother. You really need to learn to grow up. And trying to milk the tech cheese, and I work 100 hours a week crybaby acts to win brownie points within the wider tech community. Why does Linus' response feel like you're beating around the bush to avoid real controversy? All of the shit between you and LTT is petty nonsense, but your ego is getting a little too big. It's as if you want to be the de facto regulators of the YouTube tech space. Maybe stay in your lane. I just skimmed through your piece on LTT's situation. I might have missed it, but at first glance, it appears you do not address the criticism about the honey video whatsoever. You seem to be able to back up. Yeah, it's just everything repeats over and over and over again. You don't make the comments on what you actually needed to comment about, and the evidence you provide in your video is not sufficient as you claim that it is. I'm sorry, Steve, but it seems like you are just putting more kindling on the fire here, and you're not actually dousing any of the claims that Linus, any of the substantial claims that Linus made in his video on the WAN show. All you need to do is respond directly to those claims regarding Billet Labs, regarding honey, regarding everything, right? And I mean, you provide a response to some of the issues in your article on your website, but not all of them. All right. Personally, seeing the detail and your work, I would hope that you would provide a detailed line by line addressing of Linus's clip from the WAN show on the 17th. That's what I assumed you were going to do, because I assumed you would have put that amount of detail into this issue, but you didn't. I'm sorry, Steve. I expect more from you, because that's the kind of reputation you have proven to have, at least with other reviews you do and other communities or companies you take on. So come on, Steve, just give us more and actually sufficient evidence and responses. Hey, if you like the video, like it. If you want to see gaming content, I'm a gamer, subscribe. I do Twitch stuff. But Steve, if you could just actually respond to what needs to be responded to, dude, that would be unbelievably awesome. Appreciate your channel.